Hi everyone, I'm Aarush from Team 1441 Don't Blink.
And I'm a boss. I was on Team 3101 Boombots during Skystone, and I'll probably be on Team 516 Gears of Fire during Ultimate Goal.
Yep, and today we're going to be talking 3101 Boombots season summary and what they did to document their notebook, all the different outreach formatting and tips that you would need from them, as well as a quick small dive into their business section. So today we're going to be looking at all these different things. Special thanks to Abbas from coming on. Um, And just a quick note from last video, we made a switch to the formatting to make it look a little better, a little more, have a little more spice. So hopefully this works out better in the future videos as well. With that being said, this is going to be our second episode of FTC Files. And yeah, let's get started. So, Abbas, first off, can you tell me a little bit more about your team during Skystone and what exactly did you do on your team?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I think it's probably important to start a little bit before Skystone.
Mhm.
In Rover Ruckus, I wasn't on 3101 Boombots, but we're all from the same school, and we have like a robotics club, and we have 5 teams at the club. And so I was captain of Gears of Fire then, and both us and 3101 qualified from the Florida State Championship, and 3101 went one undefeated at the Houston World Championship, becoming Win Alliance captain in Rover Ruckus. And so now let's talk about Skystone. So in Skystone, we qualified for the Florida State Championship, and we were the finalist alliance captain of our division. And then we were also third place in Spire, so we did qualify for the World Championship, and we had the highest teleop OPRC going into Houston Worlds for Skystone. So this year, just a little bit about me. I was our team's co build lead and outreach lead. I was also a secondary driver, so like lift, intake, all of that stuff, and a Dean's List finalist at the Florida State
Wow.
Championship. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know, like, I think it was me and four or five of my friends. We were at the academy, which is the place we build at.
Hmm.
We had our projector up there with like the Boombots video showing the first ever 12 stack. Oh my God, that was crazy
Yeah.
to watch. And
Yeah.
then obviously
No, I think.
the Florida
Mhm.
State Championship with I think it was 38-46 Maelstrom.
Yeah.
That was amazing to watch as well. Really crazy. I think you guys
Yeah.
also
So
had the record stone limit, like for you had the record for the Florida State Championship, and you also had the height
yeah.
limit record as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were one of the few teams who did do 12 high this year, which was
That
really
was
pretty
crazy.
amazing. I think a big part of that was how much time we spent on driver practice. You
Hmm.
know, it's like you really a lot of teams underestimate how good driving is. I think
Yeah,
Ethan from GoBuilda once said like uh good build can turn like a bad idea, like can make a bad idea better, but it's really good driver practice that can make a bad build better. It's
yeah,
like, oh, like obviously he said it like a lot better than I just did, but like really driver practice is one of the most key things on a team, and you
absolutely.
really need to make sure you're doing as much of that as possible. I
Yeah,
know, like this season, I think we dropped 1 stack during a match as a team. So it was,
yeah. We've dropped countless stacks, so yeah, that's definitely important.
yeah,
Yeah. So walk us through some of the important parts of your team summary and the outreach section. I know you
yeah.
have a lot to share, so take
So
it.
the team summary, it's something we make at the end of every year for our sponsors. And the point of it is just to make sure our sponsors are, they stay in contact with us and know what's going on. And it provides just a brief overview of everything our team did this season. And one reason I really like it is I think it's good just for like marketing in general. And you're like at an outreach event or you're talking to someone new and, they're like, oh, like, what do you do? Or do you have any literature that I can read about you guys? And, you can send them our team summary was about 20 pages this year, but like they vary in size. You can make them around 15 to 30 pages, and it's just something short that people can read to get like a really good idea of what you guys are as a team. And so
Absolutely.
I think we can start with the outreach section.
Mhm.
So for our outreach section, this all our whole team summary, I'd say 95% of it is just taken from the notebook itself. And so in our notebook, as you can see, we had an outreach timeline with just all the outreach events we've done in the past 2 seasons. And then we also had some from a while ago that just were like really important and like still relevant today. So that's why we kept those in there. Like because of those events, we have some sponsors that we have today, or like we've made a big influence that still carries on today, and things like that. And so that's why we have stuff going all the way back to 2018, even though this was the 2019 to 20 season. And so I think this season we had about 36 outreach events, somewhere around
Wow.
there.
Yeah.
And so, but honestly, numbers aren't everything, really. It's about what you're doing, not the quantity. I really do think outreach is all about quality,
Mhm.
and it's about like just making a long lasting impact on people and making sure like they remember you and they remember like what you've done for STEM. So
Absolutely.
with that, we can talk a little bit about our outreach template. So as you can see, we spent a lot of time on the layout of our outreach template, making sure it was aesthetic and really easy for judges to read and get a quick idea, or get a quick idea and an in-depth idea of exactly what we did for each of the for all of our outreach events.
Mhm.
So I think one thing I would like to highlight here is, as you can see, we have two different types of talking styles. I'd say we have the traditional like long paragraph over here in the overview section, and then we have quick bullets on the right side of the page, which is like what we learned, how we spread first, and accomplishments we had.
Yeah.
And one really good thing with this that I think, one benefit of this, I think, is that judges can really choose, like, is this an outreach event that they want to spend time reading about, and they would go through the whole thing, or is this one where they just read one quick bullet from like each of the headers,
Mhm.
and that way you're not wasting their time and you're making sure they can get through as much of your notebook as possible whilst they're learning as much as possible. And then
Yeah.
another thing I think that's really important is pictures. Pictures are really, really, really helpful for outreach events, and I think every team, I usually aim to take somewhere around 15 to 20 pictures for each outreach event, and then just choosing like the best 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Obviously, this one, so this outreach event over December 2019 to January 2020, like during the transition of the year, I went to India at a robotics program I started the year before, and I went back with my friend and the primary driver of our team, and just to further the program. And so this was like the overview, page of the whole event. So like each day we talked about like it a lot more in depth. So like as you can see here, we only have 2 pictures, but they really do convey a lot about it. It shows like impact to a large amount of people as well as like personal impact. And then over here, I think it's really important to show, like, since this is an international event where we physically attended, not just virtually, um, it's important to show like exactly where it is. So we had a little map
Yeah.
there. And then another good thing about I think about our outreach template was the little blurbs we had on the side. So I wouldn't like tell like every team like, oh, like just copy these, like that's how you win, connect, or motivate or whatever. Like that's definitely not how it works. But it's just a little thing to, again, just help the judges to show like the journey your team has taken, because that's really what the notebook is about, in my eyes. And so we have like what number outreach event it was, how many people we impacted, how many hours we put into the event as a total, and cumulative hours. And so this was actually something I saw from a team at Worlds in Rover Ruckus. They had like a huge banner talking about like their outreach statistics, which I thought was just a brilliant idea. So I decided to, scale it down a little bit and implement it in each of our outreach pages. But yeah, Arush, do you have anything else you would like to ask about our outreach stuff?
No, I think that looks like absolutely great.
Hmm.
So one or two things I picked up from what you just described was like having those blurs. I think that was really cool. I know our team started implementing that at like the mid-season of Skystone.
Hmm.
We didn't exactly have those very statistics, but we did have like something where people could quickly see what exactly is going on and like pick up some
True.
information from there.
Hmm.
And one thing that I really, really liked, I don't know if you highlighted this completely, but the way you have like the actual pieces of information laid out. You see, like you have the actual overview, then a
Hmm.
picture, then you have some more information, pictures, more information. So it's not like dumping so much information onto someone at
Yeah,
once,
it's
but
not
it's
blocks of text. Yeah,
exactly. So I
yeah.
think that's something I definitely really liked. All right.
Mm.
So
And another thing I think that's really important to mention, really quick, is don't have like super specific titles, right? Make sure your outreach events are like general titles. So if the judge is looking at like your table of contents, they can see like, oh, like they did outreach at a school in India here, or like, oh, like they did a robotics interview here, or things like that.
mhm.
And that way the judges aren't spending a lot of time figuring out like exactly what you did, but just having a general idea. So they have uh, they can get through a lot more outreach events, quicker, instead of like having to like decipher the name and decipher like the acronyms and all of that stuff. So yeah. And then another thing that's important is you don't have to have like this exact layout or these exact questions, right? Like while each of our outreach events had this layout, all of these like these bullets would change from time to time, you know? So like for some questions instead of what we learned, it'd be like, you know, what we taught or like new things we experienced or things like that, you know? And just it's about like changing it up so make sure that like all of your events don't just blend together, but
Yeah.
also so that there is some consistency across everything.
Yep.
So yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
So our next question is, can you talk a bit more about the business section and specifically what you do over there? You can just touch
Yes.
upon a few points over there. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So for the business section, we didn't include it in our season summary traditionally because we don't want to like give sponsors like all of our like budgeting details or even just the general public like all of our budget details and finances and things like that. But our business section generally consisted of two things. One was like the business plan itself, and then the other was the sustainability plan. So the
Yep.
business plan included an overview of our team. It's like, you know, like our freshman percentages, ethnicities, genders, things like that. And then we had a SWOT analysis of our team, our budget, sponsorship info, like different fundraising events we've done, and our bill of parts for the robot. And then our sustainability plan had our long and short term goals, how we plan to implement like all of these, and different sustainability events, like how we teach freshmen. And you know, like how we make sure that our club and teams have a future, and it's not just like after 3 or 4 years, once the main member leaves, the team is just done.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mhm.
That's really great. All right. So our next question is, can you talk a bit more about like your design section specifically? I know at least I really want to know about like the different iterations you had on your robot because that was crazy to watch. But also, how exactly do you go about formatting the design section? I know a lot of teams have like some or the other issues with this.
Yeah. Just some reference, actually, we did win the Motivate Award at the Florida State Championship this year, and I
Mhm.
think we were either second design or second innovate. So we definitely had like you know a good combination of both robot awards and notebook awards. And so for our design section, the way it's formatted is like we have just like you know an introduction page where we just talk about general things. So like this was our 7-step process that we followed this year when designing parts, subsystems, the robot in general, and all of that stuff. And then I think this is something that was really cool is we had like an initial thoughts page, which like discussed like our initial thoughts about the game for like each aspect of the robot, right? And then you can read this, and from this you can see like how our design evolved over the season to reach where we are. And so, you know, like over here, we talk a little bit about analysis and, you know, like why we chose Rev Mechanums instead of Go Build a Mechanums or Nexus Mechanums or any of the others. And then like different intake styles we were looking at and like the pass through and things like that. And so I think this is really good for showing the journey of your team. So
I
yeah.
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I want to highlight here personally is the fact that you have captions for each and every sketch, image, or
Yeah,
CAD
definitely.
drawing. I think
Hmm.
personally captions are super important because it gives contextualization to a particular image. So that's a really great job that you've done with this. And again, the layout is like easy to read, super understandable. Yeah, I
Yeah.
personally really like it.
Okay, and then so now I can talk a little bit about the design section or for each
Mhm.
subsystem. So the way we formatted our design section is we had it done by subsystems, and then we had our meeting sort of at the back of the notebook, like at the end of the notebook. And so for each subsystem, we started with a CAD of of the subsystem. This is just like a general full robot CAD, but like for the drivetrain, as you can see, you know, like we had just labels for each like component in the drivetrain. And
Mhm.
what was really important here was that with these labels, we could use it to reference in captions later, right? So instead of anytime I'm talking about the rev mechanisms, instead of saying, you know, like rev mechanism wheels and taking up a big part of the caption, I can just say a and then talk something specific about the rev mechanisms, you know, or I can talk about the drive modules independently and, you know, talk about their weight or their strength or things like that,
Yeah.
instead of wasting a lot of time and space with like referencing the whole name each time. And so we did this for each of our subsystems, so our drivetrain, our intake, our lift, and our claw. And
Mhm.
as you can see here, you know, like we kept it a very consistent design, and just so the judges would be able to follow through with it the whole way. And then once we gave the overall CAD for each subsystem, we would go through all 7 of our steps. So as I mentioned before, our 7 steps we have over here. So the first is strategizing and defining parameters, then researching, drawing and prototyping, CADing, fabricating, testing, and iterating. And so we would go over each of these steps and like how we accomplish this or unique aspects of this. And I think a big thing is not just like dumping a ton of information on the judges, but talking about like unique processes you guys did, unique designs, or like different challenges you encountered and how you solved them. I think that's the biggest aspect of the engineering notebook is your team's journey and the challenges you faced and how you conquered them. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just realizing something like the way you have this structured is a lot like something that would fit this year's change to the notebook, which is the engineering
Hmm.
portfolio. So a lot
Yeah.
of teams can also pick up from the way you have it formatted in like a two-panel section
Hmm.
for like various CADs or information. I
Yeah.
personally really like your robot, by the way. Like that
Oh,
just
thank
looks
you.
amazing. I can't get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the intake.
Um. And another thing, I'm not quite sure if this would count, like if this whole thing would count as one page or two page for the notebook. I'm
Yeah,
probably gonna have to ask some judges and things like that. But I think personally, one thing I would recommend to teams is there's 15 pages for the notebook, and there's five main awards. You have connect, motivate, control, design, and innovate. I guess control you really wouldn't. I'm not sure if you would talk about programming or not in the engineering documentation, but if you take a look, like you have 5 main awards, and then think and inspire just come from your notebook generally. Like you're not going to talk about anything specifically for inspire or for think, and so you could split your notebook into 3 pages per award. If you're generally going for like just inspire in general, but if your team is more focused towards one thing, then maybe you would spend like 4 or 5 pages on design
exactly.
and innovate stuff while you spend 2 pages on motivate and 2 pages on connect, just as an example. But I know personally, like that's probably how I'm going to format our team's engineering documentation this year. So yeah.
Yeah, and just a quick note about the control award.
Mhm.
I'm also not 100% sure, but from what I was hearing, that's a separate submission that you can give to the judges. But it's
Yeah.
always good to
Yes.
have the software component
Mhm.
in your engineering portfolio and notebook as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the control award sheet is definitely a separate document that doesn't
Hmm.
count towards your engineering portfolio page count or anything. But I still think it's important to highlight like the
Exactly.
important
Same here.
aspects of or the unique aspects of your programming. And this is just a little bit about our autonomous and teleop this year. One thing I think teams underestimate often is the power of teleop automations. Like we
Yeah,
spent a lot of time this year automating our teleop, and that was a huge, huge advantage in our driving. Uh, so yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Alrighty, that brings us to some of the more general questions that we have. So, what are one or two important things that you think teams should keep in mind, especially with this given season?
Yeah. Um, so a couple things actually. First, templates. So as you can see, like we have a really consistent design throughout the entire notebook. Like we have the purple page with the background, and then the same type of header on each page, and it doesn't change location or anything. And this creates just a really consistent flow for the entire notebook, which I think is super important when reading it quickly. Another thing that I would recommend is creating like a master notebook outline that you follow to the T when creating your notebook. I know I did this year, and it really helped out. Like it was a really long document with like each heading and subsection we wanted, but it really helped out in the end. It was a really good thing that we did. Another thing, make sure you read the notebook guidelines over and over and over to make
Yeah.
sure you know exactly what needs to be in there. I'm not sure if First has released the notebook guidelines yet, but I know they did talk about like they updated Game Manual 1 to talk about the engineering
Hmm.
documentation changes. So make sure you read that. Another thing is make sure it's really a true reflection of your team, not only like your journey and everything, but also like your team spirit. So like make sure like add a little color or something to just make it more fun and aesthetically pleasing, and don't try to cram a bunch of stuff in one page. Like it's okay to take multiple pages, but also like don't try to bloat your notebook. Like for example here, as you can see, like we have nice spacing between everything, so it's really easy to read, and we bold thing. That's a huge thing. Bolding is really important because it draws the judge's eyes to things when you have huge blocks of text, and that's something I would recommend like all teams do. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. One thing that I picked up on, I think it was the start of like when the first thing I was learning notebook, the first thing I was told is like learn how to bold important stuff and don't just bold things randomly that make no sense. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind.
Hmm.
And the last thing we have for today is what general tips would you give rookie teams when competing this season, or just anything that you would like to leave us with?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously this season is really different compared to other seasons, with remote events and traditional events and everything. One thing, start on your notebook ASAP. Like, even though it's only 15 pages required this year, make sure those are the best 15 pages the judges have ever seen. Like, you want to make sure every single thing on those 15 pages belongs there, right? No
Yeah,
fluff thing. And then another thing, as I've like said throughout this whole discussion, like talk about your journey, challenges you faced, how you grew, things you learned, all of that stuff. Like that's really what I think FTC is about, right? It's all about personal growth, the journey, and everything. And so make sure you discuss that and make sure you convey that to the judges. And as rookies, you have a lot to learn. So yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. All right, thank you so much, Abbas. This has been
yeah,
like
of
absolutely
course.
wonderful. And good luck to your team to compete this
Yeah,
season.
thank you. You as well.
Yeah, and we'll see you all later. Bye bye.
Yep.